Hanna, you have been a member of the parliament in Ghana, and now you're in business. You're here as a member of the faculty at the Salzburg Global Seminar about breaking the glass ceiling in business and politics. Tell us a little bit about the situation for women in Africa in general and Ghana in particular.
It's difficult to generalize in Africa, the African situation for women, because of our different cultures, our different ethnicity, our different religions. In the Christian and perhaps animist parts of Africa, you find out that women have a lot more independence, so to speak, than in the Islamic countries. Because, of course, the Islamic country put certain, the best way to put it perhaps is boundaries on what women can do and what they cannot do. And that is not so much the case everywhere else. In Ghana, on the other hand, we've always had, to a certain extent, our freedom and our liberation. We don't have problems with our labor laws and equal wages and those kind of things. We've always had paid maternity leave. We've always had the opportunities to work as much as we wanted to. And there isn't too much difference in that regard. However, like everywhere else in the world, you can only go so far. And when it comes to the highest levels of leadership, then the tendency is to see it dominated more by men than by women. And that is a challenge I think we all have to deal with. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the reason why I'm enjoying this seminar.
And what about politics in Ghana? Because you were a member of parliament, was it easy for you to run? And are there many other women in parliament?
There are not that many women in parliament. The women in parliament make up about 20% of the total numbers. Uh-huh. And that's the way it's been for the last 12 years. And we haven't really gone above those numbers. But basically the constraint is money.
Women have difficulty raising money?
And the inability to raise funds to be able to contest a general election. There's also the issue that you have to prove that you are much more qualified than a man in order to get elected and be able to do a lot of the grassroots politicking. And I think that what has happened is that women who do have that level of education and skill, who could give any other man a run for his money, probably seem to think that it's not worth the trouble when they have more comfortable corporate jobs to do.
They'd rather be in the private sector than influencing policy in the public sector.
Yes.
Well, at the same time, as I understand it, there was a couple of years ago something called the Women's Manifesto, which involved a lot of women in politics and getting things changed for women. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, and the Women's Manifesto has improved the number of women who have been appointed to office as opposed to those who have been elected to office. Now, what happened was before the 2004 elections, various women's groups, professional groups, religious groups, political parties, representation from practically every area in which women work, got together to plan what we call the Women's Manifesto. Now, the whole object of the Women's Manifesto was to look at each sector, whether it was land, whether it was inheritance, whether it was the way we work, whether it was our entry into politics, leadership, governance positions, and talk about what we saw as the deficiencies and ask that certain specific actions be taken.
And so were there results from that?
There were results from that. What happened was that we asked all the political parties to sign on to the manifesto to show their commitment to women. Not all of them did, but the major political parties did pay lip service to it. Subsequent to that, we've had a record increase in the number of women who have been appointed into political office and also into senior positions in government.
And are there parallels, are there lessons for other countries in Africa or else countries around the world in that?
I think the point is, if you get together as a collective, you are much more likely to influence policy than just women in the political sphere, because we all depend on our constituencies, and politics is the one area which I think is very demand-driven. Mm-hmm. And so if you can show that there's enough people behind this and it's a major concern, then the chances are you're going to get the support to be able to make a difference.
Mm-hmm. What would you tell an individual woman, particularly in Africa but elsewhere, who is trying to get ahead, trying to change the dynamics of the situation for women? What can an individual woman do?
A lot, but then it's much easier when you combine with others. But the important thing is to define your goals and not to lose focus, and to work with like-minded women and men to be able to implement the kind of policy changes that you seek.
So we have been talking about breaking the glass ceiling for many years now. We've cracked it maybe, but not broken it. How do you see things playing out in the next 10 years?
I don't think that we should take anything of what we have achieved so far for granted. I think in the next 10 years we're going to be able to do more if we would focus more and if we would work together a bit more. You know, in the early feminist movement, you had a lot of like-minded women from different sectors and different areas working together to change what they thought was an unfair system. Mm-hmm. Now, somehow at the present time, women think that, well, we've arrived. There's a pipeline effect. It's only a matter of time before we're all going to be able to, get more women in leadership, maybe a woman president or more women presidents and things like that. But I think that it's a mistake to think of it as something that would have a pipeline effect if we don't consistently and continuously work at it. Mm-hmm. Even the gains that we have achieved may be eroded in the name of all the fundamentalisms that are now present.
And do you think the younger generation has forgotten the lessons of the older generation?
Well, in the first place, they weren't around, so they don't know what happened. And I think that they take a lot of what has happened for granted. Mm-hmm. And they think that's the way it is. And so they've got to be shown that that is not the way it was.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, those are interesting, wise observations. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.